I highlight one last piece of the work that we accomplished in New Orleans, which I think spotlights the true success that we achieved ultimately by utilizing all of the resources, all of the tools that we have at our disposal as community problem solvers, not as prosecutors, but as community problem solvers in those roles. We were investigating and prosecuting 3 of the most violent individuals operating in our city, responsible for 17 homicides on the streets of New Orleans, all facing mandatory life sentences. Upon their conviction, I had the occasion of attending their sentencing. And one individual stood up, so one college educated of the 3. He was also the least, he had the least number of homicides, I guess. He was only responsible for 3 homicides of the 17. And he stood up in court and he said that he thanked his parents who were there for investing in his life and apologized for wasting that investment. He thanked the judge for his patience. He thanked his own lawyers for their zealous advocacy. He thanked my prosecutors for their fairness. And then he said, I see Mr. Polite is here with us. I don't think he knows this, but you're like a father figure for my son. And all I would ask is that you continue to serve in that role while I'm away. And then he sat down, and the judge imposed a life sentence. And so I started looking around the courtroom, trying to understand who is this young man that he was referring to. Looking around, send my team out to try to figure out what's going on. He says, the report back is, well, he's got a son that attends your church. So maybe he got a chance to meet me at some point in church. And so I go home and I start telling my wife about this amazing experience that I've just had in court, where a defendant stood up in open court and asked me to be a role model for his son. And my wife, to John's point about being married to someone who's smarter than you are, said to me, Kenneth, you're a real idiot, you know that? Are you talking about Malik? You're talking about little Malik who has been getting tutored by your daughter for the last 2 years? Little Malik who spent time at our home? Little Malik who was connected to my daughter through Sunday school without any knowledge or awareness of our parents or the roles that they otherwise played in this world. Little Malik who started being tutored by my daughter because she wanted to be engaged in public service in the same way that the 2 of us are as parents. And so we talked about how this particular example represents so much about what can be accomplished when we actually engage with our communities from a perspective of law enforcement. The role of parents, the role that young people, my daughter, can play from the very earliest days as being change agents in their community. The role that faith-based organizations can play. The role that a father can play. Recognizing that even in the most dire of moments of his life, that he can display courage and stand up and say to the man who is responsible for putting him in prison for the rest of his life that he wanted me to continue to be a role model for his son. That was, to this day, the greatest accomplishment I've had as a member of this department. It exemplified for me that we had achieved some level of community trust in a lasting way. 2 weeks from now, I will be attending Malik's high school graduation. Let me leave you with this. I talk a lot about the role that the department can play and that prosecutors or community problem solvers can play in this world, but this work of achieving actual justice, actual peace, actual safety is literally impossible for us to do alone. We require just practically the engagement of the public over and over again as witnesses and as victims coming forward to help ensure that we are able to achieve success in our investigations and prosecution. But beyond just enforcement, the real lasting impact that you all can have in terms of engaging with our young people, in terms of engaging with formerly incarcerated individuals who are trying to overcome the obstacles that are unfortunately placed before them over and over again in return back to society. Those roles are not limited to the impact that government can have. No, government is not even the right place to achieve that success. That falls at the feet of each and every one of you and every member of our community. So I know that it is frightening. I live in Philadelphia. I was born and raised in New Orleans. I know what it's like to grow up in an area where the constant drumbeat of violence makes it unsafe to walk your streets during the day. It keeps you up at night. But we have to overcome that fear. We have to continue getting out into our communities, getting out into our schools, getting out into our streets, and engaging with those people who are at the crossroads of making the decision on whether to become a law-abiding individual. Your intervention there, your impact there can make all the difference in the life of an individual in that position. And so I look forward to working with you all individually and collectively to ensure actual safety and actual justice on the streets of this country. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much. And if we could, I'd love to have an engagement with you right after we wrap up here. But I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of us lifting up restorative justice as being at the center of the work that we do in the criminal justice space. I can tell you that we have a very innovative young woman who is, by training, a federal public defender who is now heading up our Office of Access to Justice. And so trying to replicate models related to restorative justice is at the forefront of her mission in that role. And I'm happy to be serving with her as we try to amplify that work. And like you said, it is important for it to be a priority for the leadership of the department in amplifying those particular models. I will tell you that in terms of diversion programs, that is an important priority, has always been an important priority for me. I know full well that the federal system, unfortunately, oftentimes lags behind our state system in adopting those diversion type programs. We see a lot of those models across the country at the state level, whether they're dealing with individuals who are whose criminality was driven by addiction, whether we're talking about individuals who are formerly serving in our military, or human trafficking, sex trafficking victims, who are all the subject of diversion programs across our country right now. The federal system lacks many of those resources in many of our districts. I can tell you that my time as U.S. Attorney in implementing one of the most innovative diversion programs in the federal system is a message that I try to raise to all of our U.S. attorneys right now, who must be at the center of developing those programs. Just so you have a sense of how that program worked for us, is that individuals who are low-level offenders without significant criminal history, whose offenses were driven by addiction, were then given the opportunity to receive services, training, education, job placement, all supported by our court family and members of our community. And if they were successful in resolving and completing that program, unlike some other programs where they received a reduction in their sentence or perhaps even probation, they walked out of that system without a criminal conviction at all. And so I think that particular model is one that, if replicated, could help address a number of the issues that you're raising, particularly eliminating that scarlet letter of having a felony conviction on someone's record, when in fact some of the support systems that were broken are being fixed through the system and giving them the opportunity to go back into our community as law-abiding individuals. Tell me again what else.
Sentencing and alternative diversion, restorative justice. Those were the.
Yeah, I would commend to you an article recently in the Washington Post where some of our efforts on pathways to second chances was lifted up. I think the conversation around compassionate release as a resource, as a tool for us to address some of the unnecessary, lengthy sentences that have been imposed on federal defendants, particularly in early stages of the war on crime. That is an ongoing conversation within the Department of Justice as a resource. But I will also tell you that just as we did under the Obama administration, this administration is committed to using its part and power, to using the commutation process as a way to address some of those same sentences. That article, when you get a chance to take a look at it, will lift up to you my engagement with a young woman by the name of Danielle Mintz, who was sentenced to a lifetime in prison, despite the fact that she was a low-level offender in a drug trafficking organization led by her former husband. And I wrote a letter to our president in support of her commutation of that sentence, which ultimately was successfully granted. I think that is a pathway that increasingly this department is supporting, helping those individuals address some of the lengthy sentences that were previously imposed, particularly those individuals who we know when they return back to our communities will be productive. I appreciate it. My shoulders are broad. I appreciate you placing that weight upon it. But I will say, and this is important for me, for us to continue this dialogue, and I hope this is not the last time we get an opportunity. I know it won't be, because I will make sure that we continue to dialogue. What I also hear from members of this same community, members of my same community, where there are individuals who want us to address lengthy incarceration, I will walk across the street and hear from a member of that same community about how we're not doing enough to incarcerate the individuals who we know are committing violent crimes on our streets. And so, again, this is a weighty challenge. As you said, it requires thoughtful consideration and balance of all of the equities there. But ultimately, that connectivity and working together, I think that we can ultimately lead to a safer community for us all. And so I'm looking forward to the engagement with you. Absolutely, ma'am.
So we will put the Washington Post article that you're referencing on all of our social media channels.
Sure.
And anybody in the audience can access those by using the QR codes up there. So make sure that everybody has a chance to see that. And thank you, ma'am, for the questions. We're going to take a 15-minute break because the whole point of being here is to spend some time together and have these conversations in less structured venues. But I really want to thank the Assistant Attorney General of the United States. Kenneth, thank you so much for being here. And for all the